And we are doing something a little different here tonight on Sportswire Radio. Usually you catch us and we're speaking all things related to the world of sports, and we do some wrestling, well, a lot of wrestling, but we're speaking about an up-and-coming band here in the New York area, the New York City area to be exact, and they're an up-and-coming band that's played a couple of shows and working on some new music, have a new single out there, and they've definitely caught my eyes, and I'm looking forward to getting their story. We've got Marshall, Corpus, and Joseph, and certainly let's introduce them, and they are called Panzer. So, without further ado here on the Sports Report, number one, the Level Sports Show, we have New York rock band Panzer. Gentlemen, how you doing tonight?
Hey Tom, doing good. It's good to see you again.
Absolutely,
It's been a
certainly.
good week.
I'm looking forward to this here for a while. Obviously, we've been speaking for a couple of weeks here, and obviously, you guys are definitely an up-and-coming band for sure, undoubtedly here in the New York area. But for those that are watching and listening to this on Sportswire Radio here in our flagship on sportnarium.com/player, and set the tables for us on what kind of band Panzer is. And I'll go with you, Corpus, first, and then I'll work my way to Marshall and Joseph, and set the tables for us on what is Panzer.
I think of it as a thrash punk band, and really that's something that I came up with as a term because really it's all metal, and
Yep.
it's fast, it's heavy, and it's heavy music. It's heavy music. It's nothing that's slow. It's nothing that's drawn out. It's meant to be in your face attitude. That is the music that the way it should be, the way fast music really should be, as we hear it.
Absolutely, the New York attitude for sure. And I mean, for you, Marshall, what is Panzer, and what does it mean to you?
Means to me as the real definition of what a punk rock music should be. Like, how nowadays punk rock is just looked at as like a very sad song
By whom?
by a lot of people, like young people in our generation nowadays. And then once real punk plays, they say, "Oh, this is disgusting. That's not punk." And we're trying to show them that we don't care like what they say, because this is punk. This is where it all started, and what led to this generation's like now. So
Well, every generation certainly has a different definition of music, and especially rock music, let alone punk. And I mean, for you, Joseph, I mean, talk about Panzer, and I guess what does it mean to you?
Well, Panzer, the name comes from a German tank. And
Okay.
just like the German tank, we're aggressive and fast. So it's as simple as that. That's our music in terms of something that's real, that existed. We're an aggressive force, and we're fast.
Yeah, that was actually the first song that I wrote. And really inspired by Lemmy Kilmister's lyrical.
Oh, Motorhead, absolutely. The late Lemmy, sure.
Right. I mean, obviously inspired by the sound, but what's more interesting, I mean, sound is just comes from all these different bands that we grew up listening, but his lyrical style is really straight to the point and cool. And so, using that as an inspiration, I drafted some notes just back in college over a decade ago, and with that, it came out really cool. It's like I envisioned a tank, and I just drew it on paper, but using words instead of actually drawing it out.
My first thought was, for whatever reason, it was a play on words of Pantera, because quote-unquote Pantera, I guess, has kind of gotten back together. I mean, I wouldn't quite say it's Pantera without the Abbott brothers, but they have come back. So I thought, all right, well, maybe you guys were to be confused with Pantera on purpose. I said, that would have been a brilliant name, but you guys are slightly different in music, and obviously we have a single out there that I heard, and we'll play it on Sportswire Radio here over the coming days and weeks, and it was called Hot Wire Rush, and certainly it's a single that
I
makes you
wouldn't
feel
call it a
good.
single. It's mostly a demo of a demo, really. But
Well, on Sportswire Radio, we're going to call it a single because we're going to play it on the radio worldwide. So we're going to make sure that our listeners 24 hours a day get a chance to hear it. So we'll keep it in
that's
the
awesome.
rotation.
Just trying to set
So we're-
expectations here.
All right, well, that's what we try to do here. But, I mean, talk about the single, talk about, kind of how it all came about, and maybe the
Sure.
inspirations for the song.
Now, Hot Wire Rush is entirely Fender's work. he put it together after being with the band for like 2-3 months, so 3 months, and I mean he loves fast punk bands like Misfits, Ramones, and it's just brilliant. In your face progressions, really going off of just your C scale. It's great, and it always works. Especially like with oi and upbeat music. So he took his knowledge and applied it to write his first song, and I found it to be so like fast, and his name also is so freaking burning. So so it's a really fun song overall. But another thing is right now we're going through the process of finalizing recording of all the demos. Because initially when put together as a band, our goal was to first hit it off, since it would be our first band, and to make sure. Well, actually, Fenris is what, second?
Yeah.
So it was his second band, but in our case, it was our first, and so we ended up seeing how that went, and I very quickly realized that we have a lot of fun, just to playing together. The way to convey that energy is through a live show, so that's what we went for. And then finishing the live show, we understood, people such as yourself, heard it and they dug it, because it's fast, and we were even told we were the heaviest band at Mother Pugs the night we played, even though the other bands played very heavy as well, and we're much more in sync, in my opinion, but given it was our first show, it was quite incredible. So, but then a goal came in mind that shows are great, but recording needs to be done, and so that's what we've been focusing on since then. But we have a show coming up in September, and we're really.
You want to talk about for us where that will be?
Yes, it's going to be at Juicy Lucy's.
Okay.
Shout out to Jeff and Rage. He's an awesome guy for organizing both these shows, and I mean he did Motorhead cover show just a couple of weeks ago, and he constantly does this. I mean he keeps the punk community not just of Staten Island, but of all of New York City, and just really in the East Coast.
Tri-state area, yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic. So, again, big thanks and shout out to Jeff, and it's going to be at Juicy Lucy's on the 23rd of September. It's Friday, guys, so, on your way home, you could just swing by, and it's going to be quite late, like around 9-ish, 10-ish, so you could swing by.
That's not really late, though, for us. I mean, we're young people. I mean, I wouldn't think 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock's almost like lunchtime for some people. I mean, so
it's going to be perfect time.
Let's not say it's too late. I mean, we're not in our 80s or 90s here or 70s. I mean, I would say.
I mean, in reference to coming home from work.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, that's a different ballgame. That's a different dynamic. But I would certainly hope that people are home for a few hours by that time. And September 23rd, the weather should still be okay, so it should be a nice night out. And certainly make sure that you get out there and follow the guys. And I was listening to the single again and going back, and I want to come into Joseph for a minute. I mean, playing a song, we heard Corpus talk about playing the song and such like that, and kind of a fun song. I mean, what's it like for you playing on a song like this? I mean, does it help you with your chops as a drummer? I mean, talk to me about that.
Well, I think it's definitely enjoyable since I started out mostly as a guitarist, but our first drummer unfortunately quit because he has a lot of work, and due to the lack of drummer, I stepped in. And I decided to help out my friend Corpus. But primarily I do guitar, and I have my own band as well, which, out of respect for Corpus, I'm not going to talk about my own project.
Okay, I mean, you're welcome to if you want to promote it, but if not, that's fine as well.
Okay, well, I'll just say very briefly, my project is called A Plague of Ignorance, and I have an album coming out in October.
Okay.
So it will be available.
Well, I'll tell you what, when that time comes, I'll tell you what, since we'll be respectful of Panzer's time, we'll certainly talk about the album, and we'll do a segment around that time. That way, we'll give you more of a say on it. All right?
But yeah, to answer your question, I definitely like playing the drums, even though I started out as a guitarist, and being able to play on Panzer's tracks gives me a lot of experience, which could make me, in return, a better drummer and better musician all around.
Yeah, he went like through the roof over the past months. Like I remember he had like double tape, blisters everywhere, and he would just continue hammering on, which was like one of the reasons we were able to put on such a great show, because he was able to help practice that, just the week coming up.
Let me ask you a follow-up before I bring in Marshall Joe, and let me ask you this question, because obviously you're a guitarist, and I find that fascinating. You go from being a guitarist to a drummer. I mean, talk to me about that transition and what that was like.
Well, I'm going to mention something else. You see, I'm taking dance lessons, and part of dance is using your whole body to convey music. So I'm
Syncopation,
not going to
right?
lie. After taking dance lessons, I felt that I improved as a drummer. My whole body feels a lot more coordinated. And when
Okay.
you drum, you use both your legs and your arms, just like when you dance. So to me, everything's kind of related in that regards. So I definitely feel that my experience has helped me to become a better drummer.
I wish I could be coordinated, but that's why I'm speaking with you. So hopefully, I'll learn to be a little bit more coordinated and a little bit more in sync. But hey, there's no hope for me, but there's hope certainly for the fans of Panzer. But Marshall, I mean, talk to me then also about playing on the song and what was that like? Because I'm sure it's going to mimic what some of the guys have said about the song here so far.
I would say that it's pretty good, like how the bass part that we've been doing in the songs, because like my inspirations for some of those songs come from Doyle's style of playing guitar, and Jason Newsted's lyrical uh, melodic bass lines. So I try
Although
to.
let's hope though that you guys we get to hear the bass lines on more of the songs because famously the story is in that when we had the album Metallica and Justice for All and famously Jason Newsted's bass was kind of detuned where you kind of like got buried in the drums because Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield were kind of how can I put it ribbon on him. So let's hope that Corpus and Joseph don't do that to your bass.
Hopefully.
Fenrir's bass is unbeatable. It is decisively one of the most in-your-face, electrifying tones you've ever heard.
Well, that's the reasons why we're excited about that. And I've always thought that the bass player is, in a lot of ways, one of the more important parts to a song. And certainly some of those influences there have us excited about the band. And obviously, if you like what you hear from Panzer, you can follow them on Instagram and YouTube at Panzer NYC. And we are here with them on Sportswire Radio. And if you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, you can give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our content on sportnarium.com/player. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. Obviously, speaking about the band and speaking about some upcoming stuff, I mean, obviously, working on a song like this has to get you excited maybe to come up with some more songs. So talk about maybe the process of working on new music with each other and what's that like?
Well, the way I approach songwriting is usually from the musical side first, and then lyrics after. But songs are usually structured around riffs that are repeatable. And looking into riff structure, I tend to find chords that fit within the progression, and by doing so, it can sound really awesome, and there could be different ways you could play it. So not to get carried away too much with that, I also allow myself to continuously, beat the hell out of the strings, and
So you're changing strings a lot then, I have to imagine. You're buying so many packs of strings when it comes to your guitar that you must keep the string business alive.
possibly. I like to buy good American strings. I don't replace them that often because they're well made.
Good
But
point. Good point.
yeah,
Good point.
but at the same time, uh, and then we just add lyrics now. That's like, you just gotta picture something in your head and put it down on paper. Don't make it too complicated. Although you could, and boom,
You
have
could.
a
I mean, that's what Dream Theater does, right? Dream Theater comes up with a song and it's literally an album. Or Symphony X used to do that, and there are certain bands, Queensryche to an extent. I mean, Iron Maiden has countless 9 and 10 minute songs, but I think that would be a very, very complicated process to play. I would completely agree. I mean, for you, Joe, I mean, then talk about the process of coming up with more music and how that goes about for you, because we heard Corpus's side of things.
Well, the way we do it is usually Marshall Fenris or Corpus would have an idea, and they'll usually have a good riff or two. But then they'll say, okay, I mean, the riff itself is only like 20 seconds long. How do I make it into a 2-minute song? So that's where
Right.
And I'm actually also a self-taught composer. I could read and write and sheet music, and I
Wow,
know
okay.
theory. So sometimes Corpus would come up with something, a riff in A, and I would say, okay, let's borrow a chord from a parallel key. And let's modulate it to something else. I'll sort of make it interesting. And then by using my skills, I could add another chorus or verse or bridge or whatever, and I could elongate the song to make it a little more interesting, going off of just simple ideas from these two guys. So that's how I incorporate my ideas with their music.
Our songs are like, you know, fast and loud, and Joseph always reminds that, you know, you could
still
add
use
other things.
theory and other, you know, more technical elements to your music, even if it is simple, fast, and hard.
What's important to us is that each song is better than the previous one, which is actually a lot to live up to, because that's an exponential equation, right? However,
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about some influences when it comes to like fast and heavy music. I mean, I've heard Motorhead, I've heard the Ramones, I've heard, I think, the Clash you mentioned. I mean, you think about some of these bands here. I mean, especially like Motorhead, for example, because I can't say I was like the biggest Ramones fan, but Motorhead, I've definitely listened to plenty of their music, and that's a band that you know, definitely they played. And I think Lemmy was quoted once in an interview saying he played his amp on like 11. I mean, so that's the kind of band, when you talk about fast and heavy, they're pretty much the classic definition of that.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Motorhead.
No.
But at the same time, Motorhead songs, a lot of them sound similar across the albums. It's an awesome sound, and they stick with that. I would like our songs to be more and more complex with each, that was what I referred to before, with each album for sure.
No question about that. I mean, then for you, Marshall, I mean, obviously I heard Joseph's a composer. Corpus is basically the guy that comes up with these riffs and such. So, I mean, talking about your process when it comes to coming up with music.
Coming up with music for me is like trying to find like a nice simple story behind it, rather than just like, you know, just like searching up chords. And for me, I sometimes like walk outside in the woods and just like write songs that comes up into my head. Some it can be brutal depending on the days I'm on, and some days it can be like, you know, a nice calm for melodical. So from there, that's how I try to like compose the music. But I'm not much of a lyricist myself. I'm just trying to figure out.
I would think coming up with lyrics is like one of the hardest things to do, because it's almost like you'd almost feel embarrassed to come up with something, because sometimes you're like, well, what would other people think? I mean, because it's always kind of like.
I did have something.
I believe you had a song about a POTUS. Isn't that right?
That is true. We are working on a song. We are working on a song called "God Save the POTUS." It's kind of like "God Save the Queen" cover, but instead of the Queen, it's our president, basically, and it's pretty vulgar.
Okay, well, certainly we are a radio station, so if it's anything vulgar, certainly we'll make sure that we let people imply what some of those words are about, and I'm assuming that we'll expect that at some point in the coming future for you guys to play and such. I would have to imagine then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we always have fun just, you know, seeing what comes.
How often do you guys practice a week?
We try to get together at least once a week in the studio.
Okay.
Sometimes more than that. In the coming days, it's going to be a lot more often. In the coming weeks, rather, because we have a show coming up in 50 days, and so you know, as needed, but always at least once a week, and we try to, you know, and that's it. And then we practice at home and we record at home. A lot of equipment today, you know, you have what you need, and you just work with it.
It's such a different world than you think about, like even like 20 years ago, where if you were in a band, right, or even certainly 30 years ago as an example, where you almost had to record or be in a studio every day with your bandmates or in a space, right? Somebody had a space where they had drums, and now it's like,
unless cassettes were fine for you, you know. But I mean, it came out like hearing something out of a walkie-talkie, you know, a live band on cassette.
Listen, I was listening to Def Leppard, believe it or not, because Def Leppard has a new album out, and I was listening to one of the singles because I have a friend in the radio business, and I heard the single, and I was listening to Joe Elliott and Phil Collin of Def Leppard talk, and they were talking about the fact that they did this whole album during COVID, and each player was able to record their parts from home, and they obviously have, you know, I'm sure $1 million studios because they're worth millions of dollars, but the point is they were able to do their music pretty much separately through COVID, and the album was done that way. I mean, it's such a different world than, you know, you think about years ago.
Releases happened over COVID. Like everybody sat their butt down and wrote an album. I feel. I mean, Exhumer. You know, all
I even just heard Ozzy has a new song, who just, by the way, had surgery, and he has an album coming out. And they were talking to him about. They said, "Well, how'd you come up with an album?" Because he actually had an album literally like that came out just before COVID, And he said, well, I had nothing to do, so I wrote an album during COVID. I think that a lot of people and a lot of bands probably are in the same boat with that.
It's absolutely true. Not to like give any brand recognition or whatnot. It's just what an interesting point is. Fender guitar sales went up because over COVID. For some reason, I forget the details, but that's interesting. You know, they started a new line of like less expensive guitars, but I think the trend.
Oh yeah, Fenders was always like, if you were a bassist, especially those guitar or the Telecaster, which Clapton
Right,
famously
yeah.
played, and others. You know, Fender was like that was the rich person's guitar. That
And
and Gibson.
nowadays, you could get like a combo of like some Telecaster / Strata like in between. But they say that it's because a lot of young kids are picking up the guitar. So it seems that heavy music has a strong potential just simply to come back in the form of guitar and punk music, you know.
Well, I think it. Listen, I know I've heard different things. I know I heard Gene Simmons say that rock was dead. I heard other people say it, but you know what? Guitar Hero was one of the most popular video games about 10 years ago, right? And Guitar Hero, listen, put a lot of kids that are now maybe like in high school or going into college, let's say as an example, and they grew up with Guitar Hero. And I bet you that because of Guitar Hero, actually, those kids all went out and bought guitars and learned how to play. So I think that, listen, everything always comes around. Listen, there was a time, I'm a little bit older than you, but not by much. There was a time that the guitar solo in heavy metal was not played at all. When we had new metal and rap metal, all these bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit and Stain and originally Disturbed and Slipknot, all these bands, when they were popular around like 2000, 2001, 2, they didn't play the guitar solo. But now, listen, the guitar solo came back. Even Metallica. Listen, Metallica jumped on that bandwagon. They had Saint Anger, and they had the Pepsi can drums, and there was no guitar solos in it. So, I mean, listen, it's all in cycles. At the end of the day, all this stuff is in cycles. So I never buy into the fact that rock is dead and nobody listens to music. It's just different ways to listen to music here. And then, obviously, you touched upon the fact that we're going to have a gig coming up, and obviously it's in a little over 7 weeks, 50 days starting from tomorrow.
That's right.
So we've played a gig before, sort of another gig. So what are your expectations then for this gig here at Juicy Lucy? I'll start with Joe first, and then I'll work my way around.
I think the gig will be a great opportunity for us, just like the previous one. We'll be able to play our music and hopefully gain some new fans.
Sounds like a reasonable goal, and certainly sounds like a good idea for people to come out and support the guys September the 23rd at Juicy Lucy. So certainly, I think that's the new place that has a DeFaras in it, I believe, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's the place that has that. So
yeah, hamburgers also.
Yep, so there you go. So listen, you get a little bit of everything there, and that's reasons why you also want to follow Panzer NYC, Instagram, and YouTube. So for you, Joe, I mean, what's the goal then for September the 23rd?
Well, I would say the goal is just to have as many people show up so they could hopefully enjoy our music. And when we come out with an album, they would purchase or at least stream the album. And that would work out well for everybody since they get to enjoy our music and we'll gain some fans.
I think that's a very noteworthy idea. And for you, Corpus, I mean, talk about the gig and maybe your goal and what do we look for here going forward?
The goal is to put on a really cool show and make it sound, you know, the live sound should be absolutely cool, and it will be. So that's our goal.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
But I really like that we're also considering getting more fans because that's going to definitely be something that, you know, is going to be great and it's going to happen. It's going to Staten Island is one of those places that definitely can help push that community.
I think out of the 5 boroughs, I think the largest fan base that would appreciate your music is Staten Island. Because I've noticed that whenever we played there or have gone to bars, a lot of people were very passionate about metal.
You'd be surprised how many awesome punk bands come out of Staten Island.
Well, I mean, I think it's for a couple of different reasons. I think, and I'll come back to Marshall in a second. I think the first reason is that on Staten Island, bands have the ability to practice in their own space because in Staten Island you have a lot of people that have 1 and 2 family homes, whereas like in Brooklyn, for example, a lot of places in Brooklyn, you don't have that space to play. You don't have that opportunity to regularly form a band. So a lot of these up-and-coming or established bands, they're used to having a place to play. So that gives them the opportunity to hone their chops. You're not going to be able to afford that in Manhattan. You ain't getting that in the Bronx. I mean, a lot of Brooklyn, you're not getting that either. And I think Queens is kind of more like, in a lot of ways, like a suburb. So I think Staten Island, in a lot of ways, is kind of like that almost ground where
Natural
everybody
breeding
kind of,
ground, right?
yep,
Of
there
metal
you go.
fans.
So that's why I think that that's the case here. And also, Staten Island has a heritage. Dock Street, obviously, is a place where a lot of punk bands came out of, and the skate park is there. I mean, so there's no question that there's a history there. A lot of places with the studio and all different things like that. But for you, Marshall, I mean, September 23rd is coming up, and talk to me about a goal for you when it comes to this.
Like Joseph and Corpus said, get a lot of fans. Maybe stream like or listen that
A girlfriend or two.
I wouldn't say that.
We're all in the same boat with that, so don't feel too bad.
But yeah, just want to spread our message out wherever we can in the show. The same as the first show, we got like 624 followers in the span of 2 months.
Yeah, it was kind of insane.
Wow. That's pretty cool in a sense. I mean, getting that many followers so soon, I mean, that's definitely a pretty big achievement and accomplishment. I mean, obviously getting followers. I mean, I remember people saying, "Oh, I got 100 followers, I got 200 and 500." You guys are, in significant following that you have, so that's a pretty cool thing. But obviously, we've played a gig before, and we played another gig, sort of in a sense, and obviously that gig you can watch on the band's YouTube page at Panzer NYC, where you can get information and such, along with the Instagram channel. But how much have you guys like thought about that gig and looked back and watched? Because I'm always curious about that. So
There's a cool
let's
story
jump in.
with that. So our drummer wasn't able to. Who was when we started playing and rehearsing first, and released our alpha demo with another singer, and 2 years ago we met a drummer named Gus, and he's saying drummer is like one of his 15 expertise when it comes to fields of knowledge in music. He can play any instrument better than 99% of just everybody who I've ever seen on YouTube. Guy really knows what he's doing, and being an incredible drummer. We played together for almost 2 years now, on and off with in the studio and at the show. So he ended up drumming for us at the
Mother Pugs.
Yeah, at Mother Pugs, and his name is Gus Huerta, by the way. Right now he's out touring in California.
Wow.
With a No Doubt cover band.
Wow. Okay.
But,
certainly don't speak too much about Gus. Then it was a joke. On
right. Yeah. I do want to say that he's gonna be the drummer that we'll be playing with during the show, and so while Joseph is our drummer in the meantime, Joseph is also he's helping like organize a lot of this to make it happen, and so that's why, if you're asking why Joseph is not going to be drumming, I just want to make sure that folks are aware.
Sure, and I think that's a noteworthy thing to bring up. I mean, certainly, obviously.
Well, that's a weird way of saying it, but that's kind of like what I was getting at. I just want to say the cool story that we needed a drummer really fast before that gig, and Gus was available, and and he was so cool to step in, and I just want to give a big shout out. That's all.
No, absolutely. No, listen, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you were actually so honest about that. Some people would say, well, whatever. And, so those are, important parts there, to say about. But I'm always curious, because I always want to ask this dumb question. It's kind of dumb, but it's maybe not so dumb. I mean, how'd you guys become a band? I mean, that's kind of the most obvious thing I have to ask. I mean, how'd you guys become the Panzer that we're speaking to right now on Sportzwire Radio?
Well, Joseph and I have been friends since high school, because we're both, into rock and roll, whereas that was kind of a unique thing, even, like 10, 15 years ago. So I would come over his house. I mean, he lived like, in a family home where he had, a bass, even a drum kit at some point. His dad's a bass player. And so we would just sit there and jam, and play all this cool, like, 60s and 70s riffs. And then eventually we actually played a couple of gigs in Bay Ridge area
Okay.
at a couple of Irish pubs. That was a lot of fun, like while you were in high school and like we were in college, we made a couple of shows there. So so we were always experimenting with new types of music. Like we would use experimental tools, literally screwdrivers and stuff on stringed instruments, and Joseph would come up with all these insane loops on synthesizers, like actual analog synthesizers, because he's an engineer, knows how to program them. And so we even attempted early recording back then, but technology wasn't what it is now. So
Sure.
And then Elijah noted a Misfits tattoo that I had on my calf while we happened to be in the same gym room here on Sheepshead Bay together. And
Sure.
so he asked me about that, and then noticed the band shirt of a local New York band that I was wearing. Do you remember what they were called?
I forgot.
It's a big wolf. And I found out that way that he was a bass player, and he actually said that he was in a band. At first, I didn't quite understand what he was saying. Like he was in a band, like he was a bass player, but I thought he was talking about my shirt. And like a day later, we spoke again, and I realized that he was actually a bass player.
Wow.
And so I'm like, now Joseph was actually in the process of recording and laying down the drum tracks for the album of his band. Anguish of Despair is the band. So
Plague of Ignorance.
Plague of Ignorance. Yeah, Anguish of Despair is just one of the songs.
Anguish of Despair is one of the 14 songs on my album.
That's
I
right.
digress.
So he was laying down the drum tracks, and I invited Fenris with me to join Joe when he was finishing up, and so that's how we all met. And since then we got together, in the studio every now and then at first, and then started playing. And before you know it, we realized we sound freaking awesome together. And so we're like, okay, let's give it a show, and that's how we are where we are.
You guys have anything else you want to add on that story? I mean, I feel like Corpus though kind of I guess nailed it on all fronts. Anything else you guys want to add there about how the band became what it is now?
In one of my Instagram posts is one of my auditions for them, actually.
Oh wow, that's kind of interesting. I mean, what possessed you to actually do that?
Just to share that I didn't know that I want to join a part of a band, and I didn't expect that I would join Panzer's band because I think of myself as not of a good bass player, but most people tell me that like, hey, you play this line, you're all by fucking heart, you're basically good. And I was like, I don't know.
Well,
it's true that Marshall Fenris lacks experience, but he makes up for it with enthusiasm.
He may not know all the notes, but he's an awesome bass player regardless.
Well, I'll tell you what, certainly let's give him a pass here, but I got to get to a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, Anthony J Finkel, who was in a couple of different bands in his own right, Winter Fury and Soul Mentor, and he's actually not too far from where you guys are. He's from the Ditmas Park area of Brooklyn. He's very well known there because he is the man behind DPH Property Maintenance Service. He was a very, very respected musician in his own right, and he asked, who is everyone's favorite lead guitarist? So let's go with that. Let's go with Joe first, Corpus, and then Marshall, and then we'll trade some war stories on that, I guess.
My favorite lead guitarist is Robert Fripp from King Crimson. He's a very accomplished guitarist.
Okay.
And he's definitely one of my favorites.
Okay. That's when I think about the origins of progressive music, progressive rock, King Crimson and Yes, those are the two bands I would say that are at the top of the list, I would say.
You got it.
Well, that's why I'm here and not on the guitar. But for you, Corpus, I mean, who was some of your favorite lead guitarists?
I was always blown away by Fast Eddie Clarke's ability to bend notes. He was the second guitarist of Motorhead, but a lot of people think that he was the original. You see, Larry Wallace was before him, but only for a week when Motorhead first was formed by Lemmy. However, Eddie Clarke, he joined in. He was working on a boat. There's a funny story about that. But the way he bended the notes, like even in the blues scale, he made them sing by combining just the whammy bar and the string bend in a way that nobody could. Like it does. There's no disconnect in the way he plays. So he was always my favorite because of that technicality and his awesome.
Well, he definitely used the whammy bar, unlike let's say most '80s quote unquote metal guitarists that use the whammy bar for certainly show antics or stage antics where certain different players like that. Obviously, Motorhead a little bit more of a musician's band in that sense. But for you, Marshall, I mean, give me some of your favorite lead guitarists.
One of them is Doyle from the Misfits, and the other one is Kirk Hammett from Metallica.
Boy, you really went kind of interesting there. You went from the Misfits to Metallica, although if you're a Metallica fan, the Misfits were actually a big influence on Metallica. So that actually kind of makes sense there. Although style-wise, they're two totally different guitarists there. And I also want to give a shout-out to somebody else that was in a band who's watching us, and that's our very good friend, Mr. Chris Urban, who's now a professional wrestling star. I had a chance to watch his debut over at House of Glory and get a chance to see him. Unfortunately, didn't get the win, but he did have some moves in the ring that tells me he'll be back, and we'll have him back on Sportswire Radio. He also started out, and he was in the band scene here, and he played at L'Amour's when it was around back in Brooklyn, back on 63rd Street, I think, and 15th Avenue. So what a small world, right? That was a long time ago. Those were the days. In fact, I shouldn't say it, but I'll say anyway. Chris Urban actually played a gig with Vanilla Ice at L'Amour's, believe it or not. So
That's insane.
It's a wild story. That's a wild story, right? But I won't repeat some of the things that Mr. Urban had said about Mr. Ice because we are a family station and we're also live. So I will plead the fifth on some of those things. And when it comes to obviously great music, again, please follow Panzer on YouTube and Instagram at Panzer NYC. They have obviously some upcoming gigs September the 23rd, Juicy Lucy here in Staten Island on the east shore of Staten Island in Grant City. So that is accessible by the Staten Island Railway, also the Verrazano Bridge. Not too far away from Highland Boulevard. Very simple to get to. Very easy if you're coming from southern Brooklyn. So make sure that you do follow the guys and show up and do what you can. We've also played some of the music here for us. We're going to play it on Sportswire Radio for there's new songs coming up. So I have another comment from Anthony Finkel. So let me get to that. He says, Lee McKinney, born of Osiris, Donnie from Nuclear Power Trio. So what do you guys have a thought or two on that?
Not much.
Maybe I shouldn't have put that comment up in there, but I was kind of waiting for that moment. Sometimes it reminds me almost. I can appreciate. Okay, well, that almost reminds me. There's a song from. Speaking of guitarist, actually, who I don't think get enough credit. There is a guitarist from a band called Extreme. That guitarist is named Nuno Betancourt, and he was at one time kind of considered to be the next Eddie Van Halen, but he wound up playing, believe it or not, he had a gig playing guitar with Rihanna. He was such a good guitarist that even Rihanna used him, but he was, to me, the song he wrote called Waiting for the Punchline, and that was kind of the moment where I was waiting for the guy's punchline on that. So that was something I guess that the guys are kind of stumped, but that would be what Eddie Trunk might say, stump the trunk. I don't know if you guys know Eddie Trunk or not, but he's a DJ in the New York area. He was very famous when there was WNEW, the tail end of WNEW, which was a famous rock radio station here in New York. Back when they really played rock music, not when it's like they play like Q104 and it's like the same Bruce Springsteen song, or they have K-Rock and they play like the same like Oasis song and it's like the same song. Those were the days, but that's like 20 years ago. So that's here nor there. But I mean, coming up here now, I've heard a song. We've talked about it. I mean, do you see an EP coming out in the future or new music where people can stream and buy Panzer music? I mean, it's something you guys want to answer right now for us here live?
Absolutely. Now, it's in the works now. It's literally being recorded. So an EP will be coming out within 2 to 6 months. And for sure, it's likely going to be not just an EP, but a full set album. So, yeah, absolutely. We're not doing this for the money. We're doing this because we really just enjoy playing the rock and roll.
Well, it's very hard to make music selling records these days. I mean, there's very few artists. I mean, I was speaking with somebody, I want to say it might have been 2 days ago, that is actually an independent artist. He's a professional video gamer. His name is Ty Deuce, and his real name is Ty Hanna, and he wound up being a big-time R&B singer, and he toured with like all these big names like Bobby Brown and Boyz II Men, and he was telling me that almost nobody makes money making new music unless you're an established artist. It's very hard to make new music and make money off it. Really, the only way you can get the name out there, I mean, obviously play the music, but is to go out and perform. That's where you're going to cut your teeth, I think.
Absolutely, and have fun doing it. I mean, people have different ways that they enjoy, Some people enjoy collaborating themselves over the head for fun, but we think that,
Well, we cover a lot of professional wrestling on Sportswire Radio, and I can tell you that we have definitely spoke with a lot of guys that have definitely clobbered each other over the head, and they've done more so than that. Trust me on that.
I believe it.
We've spoke with wrestlers that have masks on. I've actually spoke with a wrestler that only speaks Latin. So we actually had a translator live on the air. So I've seen all different types of things. England, believe it or not. He's from England, only speaks Latin, and he had a translator. So, I mean, and then I'd
love to learn his story.
Yeah, you would. A very, very intriguing story, to say the least. Then I had another wrestler who's of Hispanic descent from England, also wears a mask. I mean, people ask me, where do you find these people? Well, I mean, when you're number one in 5 towns in England, that's kind of how it goes. So certainly, that's here nor there. But I actually wanted to ask you something personally, and I know we kind of touched upon this when we were speaking a couple of weeks ago, but I heard you guys speak about high school, and I actually had, I guess I could kind of say it's an acquaintance that you guys might know, and his name is Jonathan Pinkersoff, and I know he went to the same high school as you. I don't know if he'll hear this. He's kind of an interesting guy, to say the least. He's basically like a scientist nowadays, but he was a big heavy metal fan, I know, back when some of you guys went to James Madison High School. And I had to ask, you guys remember a Jonathan Pinkersoff by any chance? He was really big into Ozzy, what I could tell you.
Because him and I were involved with the scientific activities that were happening at James Madison High School, like science.
That's him. Oh, that's him. That's him.
Yeah, since I'm a licensed professional engineer. I actually own an engineering company, and I went to an engineering school. And Jonathan Pinkersoff, I believe he was more into medicine and bio.
Yes, because he actually was, I believe, working on the COVID vaccine, believe it or not. He worked on that.
Yeah, that's very impressive. But yeah, we definitely remember him. And we know actually where he lives, because once I was visiting your good friend Alex,
right.
And Alex lived, I don't know if Jonathan still lives
on Quentin.
He's definitely still on Quentin Road at Ocean Avenue. Oh, he's definitely still there.
Yeah, but his friend Alex has moved out long ago. So.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, a lot of those kids have. Some of them have moved out who lived over there. Yep. Oh boy, what a small world. When I asked you guys, well, how old are you guys and where'd you go to school? And I said, oh well, I'm friends with a Jonathan Pinkersoff, and I know you and Corpus were like, well, oh yeah, I kind of know him, and that was kind of.
Yeah, I remember the guy briefly, but he knows him more than I.
Did you guys meet his mother by any chance?
Yes. Yeah, I met his mother. She hates liberals. She's very much anti-liberal, and I remember
ironically, she's a Democrat. Actually, that's the kind of ironic thing about that. She's a Democrat. Actually,
did you interview her?
No, I would lose a lot of my listeners because I cover wrestling and sports, and I do a little bit of music. If I do politics, I think I'd lose fans because then I have to go into the liberal versus conservative thing. So
they don't mix.
Yeah,
I'm just curious how you knew about her Democratic status.
Well, her son is spoken about it. That's how I know that he's spoken about his mother. So I mean, I know the son for a long time. So I know Johnny for like 4 or 5 years now. So that's kind of why I was like, it kind of came up. That's what
I met his mother because Jonathan and I were participating in a science fair at Brooklyn College, and his mother was one of the chaperones because this was like a high school trip. So
okay.
So that's how I met her.
Well, she's very intelligent. I will say she's a very intelligent woman. There's no question that she's intelligent. Obviously, some people have different philosophies, and that's fine. But, we're here on Sportswire Radio. We try to give everybody a shot. So let me just say, I'm not going to step into that debate. I'm not going to step into that world. What I will say is I'm happy to step into the music world and happy to speak about the band here. And let me ask you guys this question, because I feel like it's an important question, because I always ask this to up-and-coming bands. I've had on some bands that have been signed. I had on an R&B singer who's kind of made it, had some success, Ty Hanna. I'm also friends with a guy in the R&B world, Jeff Oakes, who was signed to Sony Records, had a record that was out there, and the label spent money on it. So I know how this works in the music world. And I'm going to ask you guys, and I'll go with Marshall first, Corpus, then Joe. What are your goals with the band? long term? I'll go with you first, Marshall, then the rest of the guys.
To hopefully get like a record label because we do sound good. I would say so myself.
I think you guys do. I think you do. You guys do sound very good.
Independent artists.
So that more followers, more people else to listen to, and kind of like try to motivate them at the same time. Like, don't be afraid to like speak out on what you want, if this is music or not. So yeah, that, and that's just it. Autographs everywhere.
I'll ask for you guys' autograph. I'll make sure to ask for your guys' autograph and make sure that. Well, I'm only goofing, but I'm sure somebody out there will get your autograph. So you never know out there. Listen, I mean, those are some worthy goals. And for you, Corpus, so what are the goals here of the band?
The goals is to be able to listen to each album that we make and really enjoy and appreciate how it was put together and how it sounds. So our goal is to create awesome music that is fun to play and fun to listen to.
I couldn't agree more with that. And for you, Joe?
I would say the goal is to make people happy, honestly. You see, a lot of the time when I listen to music, I would say it definitely makes my life a lot better listening to music. And
absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
I would feel that if we could do the same thing to our fans, that would be my end goal, to make our fans happy.
Can I ask a question to
ask me anything you want.
Our British audience? I'm just curious. I'm wearing an Oi Ain't Dead shirt. I happened to see Condemned 84 in Sweden, believe it or not, out of all places, in Norrköping.
Wow.
Like in 2017, and it was in 2019. It was an incredible show. It was at an Oi bar in the middle of this tiny village in Sweden, and all the way in the north of Sweden. So I met the Mike and Mark from Condemned 84 actually twice during the shows and during their flight out, because I was also getting on a plane. And we talked briefly, and I asked them how they're going, like, playing shows on the northeast of the U.S., and anywhere in England or Europe. Well, mostly they would get some gigs in Europe, some in England, but in the U.S. it was always a little tougher, mainly because he didn't mention anything about getting venues or pubs, but I do feel that probably was also a factor. But I guess Condemned 84 really represents like the old school of British Oi, and what I'm really curious for is if that's folks still listen to that, and if that's still, because I grew up listening to bands like Sham 69, which was even like in the time that I grew up was already had some experience behind them,
Sure.
And also I was lucky enough to see the Business live here in Brooklyn. Actually, this was at
Duff's. Was it Duff's?
St. Vitus.
Okay, yeah, I know St. Vitus. Yeah, sure.
So I'm just a huge fan of that music, and I hope that there's still a community there, and I hope that hopefully what we do here will reflect back. I know there is a whole New York hardcore community. I just call it punk. So to me, it's all just Oi punk, really. And so I hope that some of our influences are more European in that sense. And so I hope that we can bring back that.
Well, I think what's interesting, and I can add a couple of things on this because I obviously know a little bit about the music scene, even though with Sportzwire Radio. And when you think about New York hardcore, and there are a lot of bands that certainly crossed over and became very well known. Obviously, I think the most famous one was Life of Agony. Life of Agony was, I believe, the first or the second band ever signed to Roadrunner Records. They came from Brooklyn, although now you really wouldn't label them a hardcore band, but they came up in that scene with The River Runs Red, and another band that was in the tri-state area, more in the Connecticut end of it, Hatebreed. But there's no question. Yep, Hatebreed. Yep, Hatebreed was pretty big for a while. And in fact, the singer of Hatebreed actually was the host for the revival of the MTV Headbangers Ball. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but Jamie Jostev, when Headbangers Ball came back around 2004-ish, maybe 2004, 2005, they ran like an abbreviated Headbangers Ball show, and they would have like taped interviews, and he would he hosted the show probably for about like 2 or 3 years, maybe, I want to say, and he was a big part of that. And actually, Chris Urban, who I spoke about, was part of a band called Diverse, and he also played with Anthony Finkel in a band. He was a part of the New York hardcore scene. This is like maybe 10, 15 years ago now. But also going back to England, because I actually have played some music from England. There's no question that the punk scene there is, very eclectic. It's a very different scene. I've interviewed a few bands out there. One of them that would kind of be punk, a band called the Superlatives, kind of more on the grungier side. But there's no question. I think what you said about the challenges of playing gigs in America versus, let's say, Europe, is the fact that two reasons: the American rock scene, it's very they're almost like short-sighted. How can I put it in a nice way? Whereas in Europe, because we've played, I've actually interviewed some bands in Europe, and I'm on a list of a record label that sends me stuff. I really don't play much because I get so much sent to me, but there's no question that in Europe you see a lot more of like a vibrant scene, and I think that's why you see a little bit more of a variety here. And we are on Sportswire Radio here for about 10 or 15 minutes with the guys from Panzer, New York City, where you can follow them on Instagram and YouTube. And that is Marshall, plays the bass, Corpus, who plays the guitar. And well, he technically plays the guitar. He's actually playing drums at the moment. His name is Joseph, and my name is the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. As you can see for now, these guys are a trio, a power trio they are, so certainly Rush, King's X, Cream, move on over, because for now, the guys are a trio, but I have a feeling that that'll change in the coming weeks as they get ready for their technically third show, September the 23rd, Juicy Lucy here on Staten Island. Go to Panzer NYC for more information. We're hanging out with the guys for a little while longer. So obviously I know you guys are getting busy, getting ready to get back out there, and I got to ask them, give me your memories of that first gig playing at Mother Pugs, and what did that mean to you guys to play your first gig? I'll go with Corpus first because I could see he's lighting up already.
Well, yeah, that was interesting. Actually, we put it together real brilliant. We met just like several hours before practice in the studio, and got some lunch, had some beers. It was just a good day overall. And we arrived there, and we made sure to be on time early, really. We just started playing. It was great. All the other bands were super friendly. Like Sky, shout out to Sky is on Fire.
Okay.
Burn the skies. They played with us. They helped us with some of the setup. So it was just really cool all around. And so yeah, that was it.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I mean, for you, Marshall, give me give me a memory just from what the guys have told you about the first show. I know that everyone's got a different thought or two on that.
The first memory was kind of like good actually. So, because my dad went with us and he was like visiting me since COVID happened, and he was there to support me. I remember that. My friend Daniel, my coworker Steph, Marilyn, and everyone else that came there, which are my friends and my coworkers, saw me drum for the first time actually, and then from there, they saw me like how blacked out I was when I was playing bass. Like, it's like the guitar like possessed me or something like that. And then from there, it was a good time with everyone. Me, Corpus, Joseph taking shots, all of us. And that is good after a good show.
That's a fun memory. I mean, I don't know if I could top that memory, but we'll try with Joe. I mean, give me your.
Everybody remembers things differently. I remember how difficult it was hauling the amps and all the equipment around. And these amplifiers are probably like 100 pounds each. They're just so big. And we had to pick up from the rental place, bring it into the Uber, then bring it up to my apartment. And then the day later, we had to, again, take it to the rehearsal studio.
I mean, that's just the musician's burden.
That's what I was going to say. Being a musician, see, that's where wrestlers and musicians are very similar, because as a wrestler, an up-and-coming wrestler, one of the things you have to do in order to break in is to help set up and tear down the ring. And conversely, as a musician, one of the things you have to do is haul your equipment around. So those both are challenges, very similar.
So that's what I remember the most. And then there's hooking up the amps and then the settings for the amps and doing sound checks. That's what I remember most fondly.
Yeah, Joseph is also our road crew, so always shout out.
Well, that's certainly why he remembers that most. I mean, we got to give Joe a pass here on that, because Joe's got the most important and frankly the most toughest position there when it comes to playing and hauling and getting the equipment through. Like I said, I mean, that's the challenge of being a musician at this level. I mean, you have to spend to and from all that time coming back. It's not just you got to set it up on the stage. It's a lot. Takes a lot more time than that, and I could certainly appreciate that. But we got a good feeling that there's going to be more and more gigs coming up for people to enjoy, and I think that we'll certainly be looking forward to having you guys on here many more times in the future and play some music. Obviously, a lot to look forward to here with the band, and certainly has been a very interesting experience speaking with you guys. And I know that you guys are very busy getting ready for stuff on the way here and such. So I'm going to get to closing thoughts here. So let me come to Marshall first. So I'm going to give you the floor. Going to give you some closing thoughts. Anything you want to plug, share, say. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. And the floor is yours, my friend.
Thankful for the people that are watching us right now and spreading our stories, music, and how we met. I'm also thankful for everyone that supported us along the way with this, like Corpus's friends, my friends and family, everyone else. And yeah.
All right, well, that's certainly straight, simple, and to the point. Sometimes I do these, and I get people that go on for like 5 and 6 minutes, and, well, that was just kind of to the point, which is always a good thing. So, hey, listen, each to its own. But for you, Corpus, I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything you want to plug, share, say, and the floor is yours, and the fire away.
I think that we're doing a really good thing here. Punk and metal music is just an incredible thing, and playing it feels incredible. It's once you do something like that, you realize that doors open and you meet incredible people, and everybody has a great time. You have people who enjoy the show. You have people who love playing the show. And so I'm thankful for determination and strength to continue doing this, because it's a lot of fun and it's something that is a huge part of our lives. And so I'm thankful for that, and for all the people who help make this all possible. And because that's a lot of dedication. That's very important. So everybody who is watching this in New York definitely should book a day the 23rd and come see our show. Have a couple of beers, and if you've came because you saw Tom's or heard Tom's podcast, definitely let us know. That would be awesome. That might be actually the coolest thing, in my opinion, that can happen during the show, to be honest with you. That would be incredible. So I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully somebody out there who is hearing this takes up the challenge.
Well, I will say I'd like to give a shout out actually to somebody that is following you guys. I don't know if you know this or not, but a good friend of mine who's a professional wrestler in England, his name is Champ Rogers, and I'm actually wearing his shirt right now, and he's a pro wrestling star for a couple of different companies, including GT Ministries, Nonstop Action Wrestling, and Blackheart Wrestling. They call him the Patriarch, the Super Dad, the King of Barbecues. He actually follows you guys on Instagram, so I will say that he is certainly a friend of mine, a supporter of us, and he is following you guys. So I guess that would mean mission accomplished, that somebody of note who's a big deal in the professional wrestling world is following you guys. So congratulations on that. Certainly, we look forward to seeing more from that with you guys and more people like the Champ. And the Champ will be coming back to Sportswire Radio next week. So we look forward to speaking with the Champ, and maybe some music for some wrestlers from you guys. Maybe that's the key.
Wrestling is perfect for the New York hardcore scene. Yep. Come one, come all. Bring all your friends. And no, I'm not kidding. Yes, we need people. We need people.
Well, I tell you what. I mean, certainly the wrestling community, we know a lot of people, and so we'll see what we can do, and certainly try our best to make some connections. But I'll come back to that in a second. Let me come to Joe. And Joe, I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything you want to plug or share or say? And
I just want to say I'm very grateful for the opportunity to appear on your show, and I'm hoping that your fans enjoyed hearing our stories and would look forward to seeing us perform live and listening to our music.
Oh, they will. Trust me, they will. Half of them are probably in bed right now because it's about 4 o'clock in the morning in England. But I can promise you on Facebook, a lot of people will tune back in, and certainly we'll make sure people hear it on our other channels as well. And certainly we'll do our best to make sure that you get some music heard out there. We're also friends. I want to mention before we go some of our sponsors, including Prozone Gaming Division. Make sure you follow them, Prozone GD, on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook as well. Hashtag PZGD. So we'll see what we can do there. Also, our friends over at Wrestling Championship Entertainment. That certainly we do a lot of work with. Also, the LWF, KOW, Odyssey Pro Wrestling, Blackheart Wrestling, GTM, CCW, Nonstop Action Wrestling. So I want to thank all those companies as well for their support and friendship. And John Gonzalez with the Sports Authorities Group, over 4,300 members. I am a moderator of that. So those people, I'm sure, will do their best to get the word out. But ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure to be with Panzer. We will play some of their music, Hot Wire Rush, on Sportswire Radio on sportnarium.com/player. Throughout the week, we'll play it in opening for some of our shows, so we'll add that to the mix. And any music the guys have going forward, we'll certainly play, and we'll bring the guys back on before the 23rd of September to make sure we get the word out there. And we will definitely do our best to support. And gentlemen, I know it's getting hot out there, so definitely keep it live, keep it hot, keep it hard and heavy, which I know you guys will definitely do. So thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much.
You got it, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. That's all I could say. Panzer's definitely here. They are hard. They are heavy. And if you like Panzer, I can't stress it enough. You can follow them, please, on Instagram, Panzer NYC. Also on YouTube. Make sure you follow them. They're a New York thrash punk band that is definitely going to be a band you're going to be remembering here much, much more. So I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. We will be back tomorrow afternoon with a action-packed, almost punk-like punch of pro wrestling stars Killjoy, the Killjoy Cometh, and then Young Horror. So certainly look forward to that. It'll be 3 p.m. Eastern time here in New York, 8 o'clock in the UK. So I look forward to everybody tuning in. And we are here on Sportswire Radio. And if you're on sportnarium.com/player, you'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming here shortly. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in here on the #1 global radio station, Sportswire Radio. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here at Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce, with Panzer NYC.
Panzer!